Welcome everyone to this Techability webinar brought to you by Natspec and Carton. My name is Neil Beck and we're also joined with Phil today. Hi Phil.
Hi.
And we're covering technology and languages because we know there's a crossover between people who need support with English as a foreign language and people with disabilities. And that might be because they're in both categories, or it might be because they have a similar type of access issues to the curriculum or whatever you're trying to work with those individuals. If there's anything you want to know more about, then feel free to contact us on Twitter. We're at tech_ability1. So today, we're going to cover a few different things. We're going to cover translation. We'll cover some different options on mobile devices and on Windows. We'll follow through with some language support on literacy packages such as Claro, Read and Write. We'll look at AAC devices and Phil will take you through some of the key points there. Mention how to change over your phone keyboard to the different languages, and then mention a few other useful tools as well. First of all, Phil's going to start us off with a note of caution.
Yeah, I get to be the bad guy. But I just thought it was worth noting there's been obviously a lot of the tools that we're going to mention are really powerful in terms of translation, but you really need to make an assessment before you use them about how critical that information is to the person you're sharing it with. So for example, Google Translate and the tools we'll get into are great, but if it's for something critical like medical information, then you need to be thinking about a more reliable option. And this is from a while ago, it's from 2014, but the BMJ, the British Medical Journal, looked at Google Translate when using medical phrases and translation, and they found it only had less than 60% accuracy. And there were some examples in that paper of some really critical things that could be, that if they were misunderstood would be terrible for the person receiving them. So worthwhile thinking about that. If it's around medicine, if it's around critical care or that person's well-being, then well worthwhile looking at a more formal translation tool. On a slightly more light-hearted note, you can also get a lot of mistranslations for things like keywords that don't translate particularly well. So here's a sign that was up obviously near a volcano somewhere in South America, Central America. It said, in case of volcanic eruption, you will hear mermaids. Do not ignore the mermaids, they're there for your safety. And this is obviously a mistranslation of sirenas, obviously he says as if he can speak Spanish, but they've mistranslated it as sirens rather than sirens as in mythical creatures rather than sirens as in noisy alarms. So well worth thinking about, and well, if you do any translation, it's also well worth you checking that it actually makes sense when you get it into your native language. Thanks, Neil.
Yeah, especially when dealing with volcanoes.
Especially.
Excellent. Thanks, Phil. A really useful tool is Microsoft Translator, and this is available on a few different platforms, and it's really useful because you can get a number of people to join the same conversation. So it's available on Android, iOS. There is a Microsoft PowerPoint plugin, although I think that's stopped being supported now. So it's something that I'm trying to find. If we can find an older version of that, that would be good. It's also web-based as well. So in a minute, I'll demonstrate what that looks like on a browser for you. For the conversations, the powerful thing is that you can have one input language and then multiple out, and you don't need to be in the same room either. So if I wanted to put what I'm saying now into multiple different languages to different people, I could set up a conversation and get them to join that conversation. There's also an opportunity of keeping a transcript. So I've actually given this as an option for people when they're looking to have a free kind of piece of software that keeps transcripts. And of course, it's worth bearing in mind that most of the features on this require connectivity, although you can download some of the languages.
And it might be worth saying, as well, Neil, sorry, having tried this out in the past, you need pretty good fast connectivity. If you're in a college and you've got dodgy Wi-Fi, you might want to make sure you upgrade it, because it needs a decent amount of speed to get that language to and from to the servers. Yeah, great. Thanks, Phil. Yeah, good point. Great. So I'm just going to go to, so what I've done is I've gone to translator.microsoft.com and it'll ask you to log in the first time. So I've just logged in as a Microsoft account, but I think it'll also accept other different accounts. And you can either join a conversation if someone else has set one up with a conversation code, or you can start a conversation. So you can put your name in, and you can also choose your language. So my language is going to be, I'll choose English, and I'm just going to enter and start that conversation. As Phil said, you'll need good connectivity, so it might slow things down a little bit. This will be a good test for it. And that there is the joining code there. So if you join with AHJQE, you would join this conversation. Now, if you're watching the recording of this, it has to be live, so you're not going to be able to join it afterwards. There's also a QR code to join as well, so you can hold up your phone with the QR code reader and join the conversation as well. So once you're in here, let me just move the, then it won't by default take down what I'm saying unless I hit the mic symbol here. So when I, hold on. There we go. So when I hold down the space bar and start talking, it'll output what I'm saying. And at the moment, this looks like English, but obviously if someone else joins with a different language, it'll output it into whatever language they want. If you don't want to press spacebar, or you don't want to click every time you want to talk, you can turn it into presenter mode on the right-hand side here. Then it will take down everything that I'm saying. And Phil has joined in German. So just as a live demonstration on my phone. It's blurred it out. It's like blurred. It's blurred out. I'm writing obscenities. Are you writing terrible things? Like I can't. It's my background, but you'll have to trust me that on my phone I've got German equivalent of what Neil's saying, and my German isn't good enough to know whether it's very accurate. There we go. Okay, great. So you just take us back to the presentation, Phil. So those are the features that you can get from the web browser. On the app, there's a number of other features. So if you can see the screenshot on the right-hand side, then at the top, there's a microphone button. If you press that one, whatever you say, it will give you a written translation. And then it will also enable you to press a button and have that read out loud as well, which is really useful when you're talking to people. The conversation button on the right-hand side, that's with two people kind of talking to each other. That's what we've just seen then demonstrated. The bottom one is the camera function, and this you can hold up over any text and it will overlay the language of your choice over it. So if you're traveling or anything like that, it's really useful for menus, but it's also really useful for documents or other words. So I used it on, tried it with a pack of paracetamol earlier. You can hold it over and read. But again, Phil's warning about needing the accuracy there. If you're doing it with meds or something like that, be very careful. And on the left-hand side, the keyboard symbol means you can just type in kind of word by word and do translation there. So that's Microsoft Translator. And Google also have a similar type of tool.
Again, lots of different languages available, available on Android, iOS, and web-based. Again, needing connectivity. It's quite a good one if you want to share a device and have a conversation with someone, because there ends up being two icons to talk. So you can talk from English to your other language, or from the other language to English. And it gives you a good conversation tool between people. And yeah, it does work with handwriting as well, although you have to be careful with the handwriting. And yeah, tips for both of these, Microsoft and Google, is get the lighting right if you're going to take pictures of text, and just give people time to play with it first and get used to what works and what doesn't with different text. Thanks, Phil. So Microsoft Immersive Reader, this is often being covered as a general accessibility tool, as it has an inbuilt screen reader, which is useful in itself as a tool for people with English as a foreign language, because sometimes it can be easy to hear the word rather than to read the word. And it gives you that total communication where you're seeing the word at the same time as hearing it. So you start to make those connections. But what it also has, which is really useful, is a translation function, and this can translate by word or by the whole document. There's also a picture dictionary, which gives a good backup to that. And it's available not just on Microsoft Word, but also in OneNote, also in Flipgrid if you use that, and a number of other different tools. So I'll just show you what that looks like. Okay, so I can close down my conversation, and we can go to a text document that I've set up before. So here we go. We've got a story here, and it's just loading up on my version of Word. You can also do this through Microsoft Teams as well. The document reader there will look quite similar. Sometimes this view tab isn't there and you need to go to an arrow at the end to get to it. But if I go to view and I go to Immersive Reader, what it'll do is it'll put it into a accessible kind of mode, and it'll remember what the settings were that I had the last time. So you can adjust text size, you can use the screen reader, but what we're interested in today is the third option along here, book one, reading preferences. So if I go to reading preferences, we've got the picture dictionary turned on. So if I click on a particular word, it'll give me a symbol of that. So that's for morning. And what I can also do is translate, and I can choose a language again. So let's choose Bulgarian. We all know Bulgarian, right? And then if we choose by word, you can click on it, and it'll give you the word there. And if I can't read that, I can hear it as well. So if I press that, it'll play it out loud. And I could also do it by document, and it'll translate the whole document. So the document is useful if you want, obviously, the whole document translated, but by word is probably the more useful tool, because when you're having people who want to learn English, you're trying to get them to read as much in English as possible, and then just for the odd word that they get stuck on, be able to call upon something like this. So that's what makes it particularly useful as a learning tool. Okay, and if we can go back to the slides. This slide is more there for reference than anything else. It gives all the different Microsoft learning tools and what platforms they're available on. So if you scroll down to translation, for example, it gives you that it's available on OneNote and the different forms, Word, Web, Outlook Web, Teams, Flipgrid, Whiteboard, Forms, Minecraft, Edu, and Office Lens. But it's got lots of other different Microsoft learning tools there as well. Google Docs is really useful for dictation with different languages. So in Google Docs, you can go to Tools along the top, and then you go to the drop-down voice typing, and then there's a variety of different languages that you can choose from there. We actually had a European project where we had 5 or 6 different languages at once, and they were all saying their kind of bit and having it written out, and it worked really well in all the different languages. So that was handy. Recommend a good headset for this, and I've included a link there on Google support of how to access that. Okay. So Claro is one of the main kind of packages that we use for screen reading and lots of other kind of built-in tools. So just thought we'd mention what they've got available. They've got a number of different high quality voices. And what a lot of people don't know is that once you've got the bar, that you only get some of the default voices with it to begin with, and that you can go and you can download more of these. So if you go to Claro Read Cloud or Claro Voice Setup on Windows, you can go through and download a whole host of different voices with different languages. There's a video guide on the right hand side that I'm not going to show now, but if you're interested in that, it's really useful on the right hand side of this slide. And similar for read and write, they've also got language support. They've got their online version as well, which has different languages built in, and their languages are available as speech and translate or translate only. So that's whether you can actually hear it said out loud or just whether it's down as translate. There's a link there which gives you a list of languages used in translation. You can find out how to switch languages inside the software, and you can also change the read aloud voice, which is the voice that reads the text out to you. Okay. And Phil, you're going to take us through some languages for AAC.
Yeah, sure. This is just a quick overview, really. If you work with any learners who use augmentative communication on a device, there's quite a few solutions out there, and I'm just going to highlight a couple. But this might be a learner who, say, for instance, I don't know, speaks Polish at home, but they use English when they're in college or school, and they need to switch between the two languages, and it can be quite tricky. But in the last 4 or 5 years, some of the AAC companies have done a lot to support this. And the most straightforward way really is if someone uses a pre-made language pack like Snap from Tobii Dynavox or Supercore from Smartbox, then often there's a version available in the second language. So as you can see on the screen, I've listed that there's loads more availability for languages in Snap, but it does depend on the package. And the most straightforward way really is if learners use text-based AAC, then switching between keyboards is more straightforward than language packs, but obviously it's about the needs of the learner. But even if you're switching between keyboards, just remember that obviously the keyboard might need additions if there's extra characters in that language or the structure's different. And it must be, if you're setting up anything like that, you need to make it really easy for the person to switch backwards and forwards between languages, because the same is true for AAC learners as for people who are bilingual when they speak, that they will often replace words, or they can't place a word in English, so they'll find it in their own language and do that verbally. Well, in AAC, the same rules apply. So it needs to be really easy to go back between the two. They don't make them go into loads of settings. It just needs to be a quick jump. And the other thing to consider is that this is a quote from a paper by Soto and Yu, but in creating a bilingual AA system, it's not enough to simply translate the same vocabulary into a different language. Different languages might require different modalities, vocabulary, possibly even a different layout and representation and grammars. So don't be tempted to try and do a quick fix of just translate that in. There's some other research out there, though, which states the importance, especially if someone's using touchscreen access or something like that, that they need the vocabulary could ideally be in similar places so that they don't have to relearn motor patterns to get to that. But that's not always the ideal solution. It's not always possible. I put a couple of resources in here. There's a great site there, Practical AAC, with the AC in practical as AAC, and some thoughts on multilingualism and diversity, and then a page on Toby Dynavox's site about raising a multilingual child. As you might expect, a lot of the experience and research on this comes out of the US, where so many young people will be using English and Spanish. But the theory obviously still applies to any other young people who are bilingual when they're using AAC. Right, back to you, Neil, for Apple phone keyboard.
Great, thanks. So for the keyboard, something that not everyone knows is that you can change the default keyboard. So this is the one that's in any program when you type. So whether you go into Notes or you go into email, any program where you type in text, you can change the keyboard. So this is available. If you check on your iPhone now, you might see the little world symbol there. That's just between the numeric and the microphone symbol and spacebar. If it isn't, you can go to settings and then general and then keyboard and change it there. If you tap keyboards, you can add a keyboard. You can then add a new keyboard and then choose one from the list. And that'll give you a list of all the different languages that are supported. And then once you're back in the keyboard, when you tap that world symbol there, you can switch between the different keyboards. So that's on Apple. And for Android, pretty similar, but the my red box has moved. But the only difference is that it'll be in a different place, and it's on the Google keyboard called Gboard, which most people have as a default. But in case you don't, then you need to install that, and then you can go to your settings again, tap languages, and then tap add keyboard, and then pick the language that you want to turn on. And that's a useful way to kind of switch between languages when you're typing things. Just thought I'd add a few other useful little tools here that are in the same kind of related category. One of these is Spread the Sign. So this is available as an app. It's also available on so iOS and Android. It's also available on the desktop as any browser. You can go to Spread the Sign, and it's a sign language finder. It has videos that are signed, so you don't have to worry about kind of images that might be quite difficult. You can choose what speed you want them done in, and there's different languages supported in that, and it's being constantly updated because it's a community-based system. You can favorite things that you find useful, you can share them, and it's really good if you're looking at communicating with someone who uses a different form of sign language. Tap to text. This is a useful tool for learners who or individuals who just want to send a message quickly that's pre-written. So this has a wide variety of uses for lots of people with different needs, but particularly for those who language is a difficulty, it can be quite easy for them just to be able to hit kind of default icons. So it'll automatically have pre-written text. It will have the contact details included. It's really good for emergencies, but it's also good for routines. I tap and you're just leaving the house. It's free, and you get so many messages that you can put in at once. And then if you want to use more messages, then you have to pay for an upgrade. Just some other tools that are quite useful. Padlet is very useful if you're looking to do language projects, and you can choose a particular theme, and it will lay these out into columns or squares, and you can get people to add either video or audio or text. So it's quite good for mixed multimedia. Flipgrid, similar type of basis where you can set a video task. So it's very good for oral practice of a language. You can make that very interesting as well. You can have objects in your videos, you can have links, and you can get people to do quite interesting projects there in practice. You can even set up a kind of pen pals type thing with someone as well, where you get someone from another country to be their pen pal, so they can send each other videos in different languages, obviously taking into account safeguarding and things like that. Lyrics training is quite a good one. I always think that other countries have an advantage sometimes in learning English because they hear so much about music and you pick up lyrics over time. And I always feel a bit let down that we don't get much other music in different languages. So this app takes advantage of that and means that you can actually pick out the lyrics and see how much you can pick out in a particular song. So I thought that was quite an interesting way of learning a language. Google Tour Creator, if you want to kind of mix in that immersion and give people a connection back to where they feel a connection to, wherever that is. The example on the right hand side is the Taj Mahal. Those are just kind of the default ones, but you can set up a tour of any area really within the world. And Geolingo is a very popular one. The Geolingo owl is very notorious for being relentless and kind of spamming you with kind of reminding you to do it. But it's a really good way to learn a new language or develop your skills in a current language. So that brings us to the end of languages and technology. Hopefully there's some useful things there. It is set up as a introduction type. So if there's anything that you want us to develop more, or anything you want more details on, then get in touch. You can contact us, techability@natspec.org.uk. Again, on Twitter, tech_ability1, or follow the web links there to either find us on the web or watch our webinars. We'll leave the chat open a few minutes, just if there's any questions, and thank you all for attending.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks.